Hello everybody! I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and we gotta talk about the concept of review scores once again. It's a practice so ingrained in the video games industry and conversation surrounding them is surging once again, mainly with the release of Black Myth Wukong, a game where you play as the Destined One following in the steps of Sun Wukong, heavily inspired by Journey to the West, and a game all about taking on a variety of different boss fights. I've been playing the game recently, and I have been absolutely adoring the game as well. However, if you've been tuning into a lot of conversations surrounding Black Myth Wukong, you'll know that there's quite a bit of controversy from the usual Culture Wars crowd when it concerns this game. And I want to talk about review scores and reviews overall, because the video game landscape is ever-changing and ever-evolving, and I think what used to be a decent way to get a point across in terms of conveying how good a game is has seen its impact be shifted away from informative to sensationalist. And that is the concept of the review score. And you have aggregate sites like Metacritic compounding all these review scores together to churn out this number meant to represent everyone's opinion who have contributed. But particularly with Black Myth Wukong, we have seen certain reviews, namely the Screen Rant one, be brought up again and again by people out there, and hyper-fixating on certain elements of said review in an attempt to demean or diminish that review and that review score. Now, the game currently sits at an 81 on Metacritic for the meta score and a 7.4 for the user score. So critically, seems like it's being rated okay, with Screen Rant giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. We can go on and on and on about the issues with Metacritic and trying to compile all these different review scores that use different metrics and all that, but I want to focus in on the popular one with Screen Rant, because one of the cons they list in their kind of TLDR version of the review is that the game is lacking in inclusivity and diversity. And you have a lot of people out there who see this review and wonder, why is this being listed as one of the 3 main cons for the game when it's not, concerning the actual gameplay of Black Myth Wukong? Like a lot of Culture War stuff when it concerns video games and just overall, I feel as if the conversation is being shifted and strawmanned to just circular discussions instead of something that is actually palpable and useful for most people. I don't take an issue with someone in their own review citing this lack of inclusivity and diversity as a con. I don't view that as a problem. It's your review. Review it how you want. And if this is something that actually does matter to you and something that negatively impacts your enjoyment of the game, it wouldn't for me. But if that's your thing, you do you. But here's the rub. Some people will point out how this is being tallied into the review score, which could paint a negative connotation with the game. Well, the issue with review scores runs much deeper than this in my opinion, because if I just showed you the Screen Rant rating, 3 out of 5 stars for Black Myth Wukong, you would not know what went into that number. You would not know what went into that rating, the context surrounding it. You don't know who the reviewer is, you don't know what they like and dislike, or what they even like and dislike pertaining to Black Myth Wukong or gaming on the whole. A review score by itself is inherently lacking context. And when it's inherently a subjective amalgamation of someone's opinion about a certain game or topic, trying to pool all these different review scores with their own different scales and rankings, and the opinions and context that go behind these review scores are just lost to the annals of time and the internet, then an aggregate score like from, say, Metacritic or other similar sites, in my opinion, inherently loses its meaning and its credibility and its importance. Because if you're taking all these different numbers, where so many different factors go into the formation of these numbers, they aren't normalized. There's not an actual scale that everyone's going off of to ranking this game. You're just taking a bunch of numbers inherently lacking context and assuming you can aggregate them all, and I just don't think that's the case. And the other problem with review scores is if they lack context, okay, then let me get the context. Let me understand what went into the formation of this number. And then I provide you the rest of the Screen Rant article or the review or just any review overall, and you read it, all of a sudden you no longer need the number to know what they think. If I show you this blurb from Screen Rant, where they say the pros are that the combat is fluid and fun, the cinematography can be breathtaking at times, and there's great diversity in items and mechanics, and the cons for the game being game performance is unpolished, the game lacks in inclusivity and diversity, and the gameplay becomes repetitive over time, you no longer need the review score itself because you know what went into the formation of that number. So, a review score by itself in the modern day lacks context, so you don't know what went into it, so it's a meaningless number, but if you do know what went into the formation of that number, then it provides no actual benefit to the consumer or people on the whole. Let alone if I give you the rest of the review where they go further into detail about the rest of the game. Way back in the day, when learning and researching about new upcoming games was a far harder endeavor, and you had to rely on traditional games media for trailers or opinions or reviews and stuff like that, a review score at a glance could be a really helpful indicator about whether or not a game is being received well or not. And that's still true to some degree in the modern day, but the fact of the matter is, this is the modern gaming scene, where at a click of the button, I can go to multiple different websites and just see actual gameplay. I can see the game and make a judgment based on that from a live stream or a YouTube video, and make a judgment based on that whether or not I want to play the game or I want to support the game, whatever. I no longer have to wait for a magazine to come out with the review and a review score and make a judgment based on that. I have far more tools in my tool belt as a consumer in the modern day than ever before. And I think as a direct result of this, what we are seeing when it comes to review scores and reviews on the whole are them shifting away from being informative and necessarily trying to fill not a niche, but a hole to inform consumers about what they should be on the lookout or. But what I think we are seeing is review scores in terms of their concept and their overall discussion shifting away from an even loose attempt to be informative and moving more and more to the realm of being sensationalist, utilized for clicks and just for conversation overall, because it's a good catch-all description for how someone feels about a game. Review scores more and more in the modern day feel as if they serve nothing more than for people to try and justify or feel emboldened in their own opinions rather than trying to be informative by themselves. They feel more clickbaity than anything, and in an industry that is ever more relying on clickbait to stay relevant and to stay in popular discussion, I think that over time that does eventually erode away trust in critic reviews as a concept. We're already seeing review scores come out for Star Wars Outlaws, which isn't even out yet at the time of recording this video, and it's sitting at a 77 on Metacritic and a 7 overall from IGN, and we're seeing people debate these numbers as if they know any better because review scores in the modern day feel like a relic from the past trying desperately to stay relevant. At a glance before, when trying to gather genuine information about a game could actually be a difficult endeavor and you had to rely on these secondhand sources and essentially these middlemen to play the game before release and tell you their thoughts, their opinions, and you had to go and work off of that in any trailers, which may or may not be misleading by themselves. Now you no longer have to do that. You just sit back and watch a stream or watch gameplay on YouTube or whatever, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. There's so many avenues, so many ways to gather information where you don't need a middleman to come into the conversation to insert their own agenda or give their opinion at all, because you can just go out and directly ascertain whether or not a game's going to be enjoyable for you and then go off of that. Especially in an online scene where a lot of conversation that is loud and in your face concerning a lot of these popular games that come out is more so rooted in binary culture war arguments and just talking points. It shifts the conversation away from genuine discussion about the pros and cons of a game and shifts it to a topic that is not the main concern for most people. They want to know if the game is enjoyable, if it will run on their machine, how the game performs, and if the game is fun and enjoyable and engaging enough to where they want to spend money to play the game. At the end of the day, most consumers out there will want an enjoyable game, and they will want to know if they're going to enjoy the game first and foremost before anyone. Doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on in this, they don't care about the agenda. They want to know if the game itself is good. It's why more often than not I don't particularly engage in a lot of conversation about review scores and all that, because I don't put much stock in the practice to begin with. The number itself is meaningless and devoid of context, and if you have the meaning that went into the the formation of that number, and you have the context surrounding it, and the opinions of the reviewer, then you no longer need the number anyways. The number serves as nothing more than glorified clickbait to generate conversation, and is often hijacked by culture war arguers online to try and justify their own position on any given game. The number itself does not actually benefit most people. I don't see a genuine benefit to review scores. The only, minor niche scenario where a review score might come in handy is if you already know the reviewer and what they tend to like and dislike, and you can use that to make your own judgments. And if you're in a situation where, you need to know right this second if you need to buy or not buy this game, then maybe. But realistically, what situations are we ever in where that's needed? I get that a lot of people out there don't want to just sit around all the time reading a bunch of reviews or whatnot, but then you can just go watch gameplay of the game. Uninterrupted, unopinionated gameplay about it, and just see if the game is going to fit the vibe you want or not. I have been loving Black Myth Wukong. Am I going to care that much about what any particular reviewer out there thinks about it? Am I going to engage in whether or not it's justified that Black Myth Wukong got an 81 on Metacritic? No, because at the end of the day, who cares? I watched gameplay, I watched pre-release content surrounding Black Myth Wukong, decided to check the game out, and I've been really enjoying it. This industry puts way too much stock on review scores, and has always done this, but it's especially true in the modern day. You can't take all these different number systems, out of 5, out of 10, out of 100, out of bananas, whatever, it doesn't matter. You can't just aggregate all these numbers, devoid of the context surrounding what went into the formation of that number to begin with, and assume that final number means something at the end of the day. Other games have scored higher than Black Myth Wukong on Metacritic this year, but if I was a betting man, I would say the odds are on for Black Myth Wukong to win Game of the Year this year. At the end of it all, I just feel as if review scores are meant more so to drive conversation surrounding the game, and to be sensationalist than anything else. And with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. Leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your opinions on review scores. What was a review that you remember seeing the score of and just being in disbelief one way or the other? Or do you think there's a perspective that I'm missing out on when it comes to review scores? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hear your opinions and hear your perspectives. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.